with our big story. They take on Purdue, and it got us thinking a bit about the biggest win of the Jeff Brom era at Purdue when they topped number 2 Ohio State 49-23 years ago. Boilers, remember, started 0-3. They went on a 4-game win streak. It culminated in this victory over the Bucks, the highest-ranked team they had beaten since 1984. That the definitive Rondale Moore play right there. They beat number 2 there, trying to beat number 2 on Saturday as well. And recent history in this rivalry suggests they have got a chance. They topped the Hawks last year in the season opener. They've actually won 3 of the last 4 in the series. The last 3 meetings between these two schools have been decided by a combined 12 points. So pretty close. Jerry, how do you see this matchup?
You know, what jumps out at me at first is a weakness against a strength, right? You look at Jeff Brom's offense. I mean, they have really struggled running the game. He said something in his last game in his press conference about we have problems in the red zone because we can't run the ball. They're 14th in the conference in rushing offense, and then you have Iowa, who's 3rd in rushing defense. And we know how good Iowa's defense is. So you have an off week like you have Purdue. There's not much you can do to improve your run game in a week off. You've had all camp, and so Jeff has to figure this out. Do I just the heck with the run game? I'll mix it in a little bit, but I'm going to throw the heck out of the ball. I'm going to ask my defense to hold serve. Now, the defense can get a little more creative with a week off, trying to defend some of the things that Iowa does. On the other hand, Iowa has been challenged before with people packing the box, and Brian Ferentz, offensive coordinator, he has broke the formation quite a bit against Penn State, by way of example. So it starts out with a weak rushing attack of Purdue against a strong rushing defense of Iowa, and then after that is when the game plan and the gamemanship starts coming in.
What's the balancing act there? So you know you're not good running the ball, and Purdue, there's a variety of reasons why. One of them is Xander Horvath out for the year, and he was the back that they were relying on, but frankly, they haven't been very good running it here for a couple of years. So on one hand, you know you're not great at it. On the other hand, you have a defense which is so good to begin with when they don't know what's coming. If they do know what's coming, they're that much better, right? And they force so many turnovers, particularly the interceptions. So at what point do you say, all right, we have to stick with it, even if we don't see a lot of success coming from it, because otherwise we're in real trouble? It becomes, as you say, a pass rush drill, or they're just sitting on routes. What's the balancing act there?
It's just the feel for the play caller. And, you know, I mean, I think Jeff Brom's got a reputation of being a really good play caller, so he's going to have to mix it in. You know, I can remember the same thing going against Steve Spurrier, right? He didn't have all that many plays, and he didn't run the ball all that much, but you still had to defend the run because he had a knack when to call it. And I think that's what Jeff has to do. And I think a little of it depends on how well the defense is playing. I mean, I don't think Jeff Brom's ever had a defense playing like this since he's been at Purdue. So that influences his play calling a little bit. You know, if he relies on his defense, he might take some risks. So how many times you have to run it? You know, most situations in football are situational, right? 3rd and short's a run, 3rd and long's a pass. It's the 24 1st and 10s that Jeff has to decide. How many of those 24 1st and 10s do I run the ball? It's not going to be 50-50. We know that
for sure. Yeah.
So that's the greatness of a really good play caller. He's got to figure that out.
It seems to me the biggest way, you kind of look at these games and you say, okay, well, how can Purdue win it? And it seems to me the biggest thing they got to do, first of all, their defense has to play well, which it has all year. And because of the nature of the game that Iowa plays, it feels like they're going to play in a lot of close games, right? Mm-hmm. Unless you just turn the ball over against them repeatedly, as Maryland did, and give them a bunch of short fields, and then they can run up the score on you, which is what they did. So it seems to me, as you try to put together the equation, one obvious thing is you got to be close in the turnover battle,
right?
Which is hard for Purdue to do. What else can you do?
Well, I think it starts with emotion, right? It starts with the week off. I mean, we just showed something to lead into this conversation. I mean, the Purdue guys know what you just showed, right? They know the history. They know they beat Ohio State when Ohio State was number 2, and now Iowa's number 2. So they know what can happen. The week off is an advantage, more so for the Purdue defense, I think, than the Purdue offense. Now, Jeff may add some different routes that Iowa hasn't seen, but again, there's no way he's going to get better in the run game. So I think emotions and state of the mind. Iowa coming off a huge win, and we're still talking about something that happened last Saturday. That's a distraction. So there's enough there to give Purdue the emotional edge and the motivational edge.
Does feel that way. Yeah, absolutely. The issue for Purdue, of course, going on the road, they have struggled mightily on the road, have not won a road game against a ranked team since the early part of this century. So whether or not they can pull it off in what figures to be another hostile environment, we will see at Kinnick. So they are one of just 2 of the 5 top 10 Big Ten teams that is in action this weekend. The other one is Michigan State. The Spartans will be taking on Indiana. And we've talked a lot about this. This has been a major theme of Michigan State this year. You see the key contributions of players out of the portal. They added 15 scholarship transfers in the offseason. Now they had 22 scholarship players transfer out. So just kind of this massive overhaul. And Kenneth Walker III is the most obvious one. But as you can see, some really key players, 6 starters on this team, and then a 7th where you'd add Jaden Reed in, who, of course, transferred the year before from Western Michigan. The transfer portal has changed everything here. And Michigan State is really a case in point. But more broadly, when you talk about rebuilding a program, what's the impact that you've seen from the transfer portal here?
Yeah, so let's advance the conversation. We know that Michigan State's done as good a job as anybody in the country at the transfer portal. That's been established, and we're showing the video now to prove it. But where do we go from here? I've given this a lot of thought, and I think it has a lot to do with recruiting. First of all, there was a time when someone said, "Coach, I'm going somewhere else." You kind of got mad at the guy, right? Now, when he says he's going somewhere else, you kind of throw your arms around him and say, "Keep my number." How about an assistant coach within the rules that is allowed to stay in contact with a player on another team? I'm not sure what all the rules are, but assistant coaches develop relationships with these prospects, right? And if they don't come to his school and they still have a relationship, that could play, obviously, as you go forward. How about an assistant coach that becomes a head coach, had a great relationship with a quarterback, but the quarterback went to another school, and now he's going from an assistant coach to a head coach. I used to have 2 meetings a year, mandatory meetings with every individual player, one after spring practice and one after the fall season. And they had a card they had to fill out. They had to go see the trainer, the academic advisor, and the equipment people, make sure everything was okay. They met with their assistant coach, and then I've got a list on there where the assistant coach filled out. It's mostly their grades on the field. And I would say to you, if I was doing this now, I would have the transfer portal on that sheet. I would want to know at the end of spring and at the end of camp, I'd want to know if you were on my team, Dave, are you thinking about leaving? And I would say to the player, this is between you and I. I promise you, I won't tell anybody. I won't tell the assistant coaches. This is a private conversation. If you want to tell someone, you can tell them. But you can be honest with me, and you can tell me if you think you want to stay or if you want to look and go somewhere else. I think it's the only way to deal with it. Everybody talks about keeping the second-team quarterback happy. I disagree. I'm going to keep 3 happy. 2's gone. I'm serious. Yeah. I mean, number 2 is probably going to leave. I'm going to make sure number 3 is happy. And I would go through my roster and I would see that situation and try to anticipate some of those things. What Mel has done and what a lot of coaches have done is they've modeled their recruiting office to the NFL, right?
Yes.
There's a whole department at Michigan State that just looks at present players playing college football. And without breaking the rules, they're trying to find out as much information as possible. They're being told by the head coach what positions they want to look for. And then there's another department that's more traditional, recruiting the high school players. For athletic directors not to support that with as many people as the coach asked for puts a coach at a disadvantage. So that's how I see it going forward. You better address it head on with your present players, and you better have a big, what I call, back room. I know that sounds sleazy, but it's not.
But it's just the reality, right? And so at a certain point, you can either fight against it and say, well, this just doesn't seem like kind of the way that I imagine that college sports is supposed to be, and therefore I'm not going to participate in it, or I'm going to resist it. Or you can just say, this is a way, particularly if you're coming into a program and you're trying to get it back to where it was in its very recent history, but where it wasn't at that point, where it wasn't last year. You can say, well, either we can go out and we can recruit high school and we can develop guys and we can find guys who are good fits, and they may not realize they're good fits and they may leave, or we can just say, you know what, we're going to continue to do that, but the reality is there's a different way to do it too, and we're going to try to embrace both of those, and whether you find it distasteful or however you frame it, It just is this is the reality.
Right, and I think the one misconception is this is the way it's always been. When I went to Notre Dame, we had 140 guys on scholarship. There weren't 140 happy campers, but there was just nowhere that they
couldn't go anywhere. Or if they did, it took a long time.
How about Lloyd Carr? Lloyd Carr started at Missouri and finished at Northern Michigan. How about Scott Frost? He started at Stanford. He's at Nebraska. I mean, those two guys, when someone walked into their office and said, I want to transfer, how could they say, you are not transferring away?
How about Fielding Yost? He played for two different schools in the same year. That's going back a ways.
That's going back a ways. So this isn't a new problem or that's not a problem. This isn't a new issue. It just has different solutions than it ever had. Yeah. And I think it's all good.
No, I know you do. It's fascinating. It really is. And to your point, not only has Mel Tucker embraced it, but he has said to his backroom guys, for lack of a better phrase, using the phrase you used there, hey, here's what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And here's the type of player I'm looking for. These are the positions. This is the type of player. Go find him. And if someone like that pops up, you let me know about him, and then aggressively go after him.
And again, I go back to that assistant coach who, let's say the assistant coach, his head coach got fired, and he's looking for a job, and he interviews with another head coach and says, I got to tell you, Revson and I are really close, and I can get him perhaps to come. There's all kinds of that kind of stuff going. You just have to be careful of the rules. No one wants to intentionally break the rules. So the world's changed. It used to be flat, it's round.
Yeah, that is for sure. Huge field hockey match coming up tomorrow on the Big Ten Network, the biggest of the Big Ten in recent memory. Number 1 Iowa hosting number 2 Michigan, the only 2 undefeated teams in the country going head-to-head. You can see it here on the Big Ten Network at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are very pleased to be joined by Lisa Celluci, the coach of the top-ranked Hawkeyes. She joins us for today's big interview. Coach, really appreciate the time. I know you've got a lot going on preparing for this game, but thanks for taking a few minutes to talk to us. These two teams have been on a collision course here now for a few weeks, and we've kind of been looking at the schedule and saying, wouldn't it be amazing to get them going head-to-head undefeated? So what's it like that it has finally come to fruition?
Yeah, pretty unbelievable that we're actually here at this point with number 1 and number 2 both undefeated. Friday's huge. It's going to be a great game to watch. And I think, probably one of the truest number 1 versus 2 matchups there's been. They're number 1 in the RPI. We're number 2. We're number 1 in the rankings. They're number 2. I could go on and on. We're number 1 in goals against average and scoring margin. They're number 2. And there's so many layers to that. But how exciting, just and awesome for our sport and really for the Big Ten to have the top 2 teams in the country and the 2 remaining undefeated teams be from, first and foremost, the West region and then the Big Ten Conference. So it's great for our sport, and we are so excited to play Friday.
I want to dive into this matchup a little bit. You talked about you guys leading in goals against average. You're such a good defensive team, and it's such an interesting matchup, right? Because they are known for their offense. You are known for your defense. Not to say that each team isn't good on the other side, but that's kind of the narrative here. So let's talk about that matchup and how high-powered they are. What are the challenges against their attack?
Yeah, they have some, first of all, just skill and savvy in every line, some great speed up front, and just, some unbelievable goal scorers. So we're going to have to play fantastic team defense, which has been, a staple of ours, but especially in transition and our counter D structure to, give ourselves a chance to continue to be able to win the ball and then put them under pressure on attack. So we're ready for it. We've been training, for a long time for this. Our defense has been outstanding. But, there are going to be some really interesting, really fun matchups tomorrow. Tomorrow.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. Yes. Tomorrow. One of the reasons you're so good defensively is Anta Nizel, the reigning Big Ten Player of the Year. Give us a sense of what she has meant to this team and this program.
She's been unbelievable for 4 years. Just so poised every day at practice. She's put under a lot of pressure game in and game out, and she just handles it with great poise and great grace. And she's very present. And she has, a tough matchup in every game, usually going against every team's top player. So, for her size, she can run with the top forwards in the country. And I just can't say enough about her. She is our stalwart back there on our defense.
One of the things that's really interesting, and there are several sports that are like this, is you had a spring season last year, and now you turn around very quickly and have a fall season. And it gave a lot of players, because of COVID, the option to come back. And a number of your key players did, particularly on the offensive end. We've been raving about your defense, but your offense has really improved. A big part of the reason why. How much has that continuity helped you improve on that side?
Oh, it's been unbelievable, because typically for Iowa, we're always known for our defense, and not that we struggled to score goals in the past, but, we've had so many different people step up and score goals this year. And to have Ellie Holly and Maddie Murphy returning All-Americans from our Final Four run last year to be back this year. And, no surprise, they're leading the way, just scoring great goals, getting great assists. And then, really probably the biggest strength we have is that not that we returned every starter, but we have 11 fourth or fifth year players on this team, and they are leading this group, and just they know the commitment required and standards of how we want to practice and play, and they're driving this ship. It's been pretty fantastic.
Lisa, I do want to talk a little bit about building Iowa to the point that you have. This was a really difficult situation, as anyone who follows the sport knows, when you took over. And without diving into the details of it, what does it mean to you, as someone who played there, who had been an assistant coach there, who really bleeds Iowa black and gold here, to have this team back atop the country?
I'll tell you, it means a lot. And that's really why I go to work and my staff goes to work every day. And this team is just to live up and to uphold the tradition that has been set here in Iowa field hockey that's been going for so long, since, the 70s and 80s. And, it's a real privilege to be able to coach at my alma mater. And, yes, it was really difficult to get the team back to where we are right now. But so many people to just thank for that. My staff, the student athletes, the alumni who have been fantastic. And it just means the world to be able to have this team in a position to be able to battle, for a national championship.
One of the things that I have found really interesting through the years, and certainly we see this with Kirk Ferentz, with Fran McCaffrey at this point, you could make a similar comparison with Hayden Fry, is a lot of the people who come to be identified with Iowa are not native Iowans. They come to Iowa as either a player, or in the case of all of you, in your case, a player and a coach, in their case, simply as coaches, and they fall in love with the place, and they are embraced. What is it about Iowa? And you're from Philadelphia, and yet you will be so clearly identified with Iowa. What is it about the place that allows that?
It really is the people. And, when I was being recruited by Iowa, I stepped on campus, and I don't know, it was kind of like Oz for me. You're at a school with, there's field hockey's not played in the state. And just a lot for me at the time was the people that were involved, and Dr. Grant really leading the ship here of the championship culture that she created and what she was doing for women's athletics at the time in the 90s. So I'm dating myself, but I think everybody that does come to Iowa, we have a lot of continuity in the coaching staff across the board, as you just mentioned, and just fantastic support and resources for our coaches and for our student athletes. But for me personally, I wanted to be a part of something really special. And as soon as I got here on my official visit, nothing else even compared. And it really just had to do with the pride and the tradition and that culture that, she created.
Iowa, of course, has become known for the wave at the end of the first quarter in the football games. And I know you're going through something with a young person who's really important to you in your life. Your nephew, Peter, has been battling cancer. Tell us a little bit about, I know the team has embraced him, really been active in encouraging him. What has that meant to him and to you?
Well, just the way the team has been so wonderful to him and my family, and showing so much love. I'm forever thankful for that. And, the Hawks always bring a smile to his face. And, we as a team, it's really brought things in perspective to us. Peter's diagnosis and battle with medulloblastoma immediately put things in perspective for me. Here I am worried about a field hockey game when my 8-year-old nephew is fighting for his life, right? So he's been a real inspiration. I just admire him and my brother's family for how they've responded to this life-changing event. And really, they're teaching all of us to just focus on the things that really matter. The people in our lives, living life to the fullest, making important connections, and just being grateful for every day. And it's something that we do talk about with the team a lot. So Peter truly is a daily reminder of just true courage and taking on every day as it comes with bravery. And, we hope that he's going to, continue this fight and hopefully get into remission.
Well said. We echo that sentiment here. Lisa Celluci, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us. Cannot wait to watch this match tomorrow. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Go Hawks.